My name is Joselito Toots Tolentino. I am a publicist by profession. I've been in this job since 1983. And as a publicist, I handle clients or accounts primarily dealing with lifestyle businesses. When I say lifestyle, this covers art and culture, health and wellness. There's also fashion, arts and crafts. There's also food restaurants. There's also personalities and also special events. Over the last so many years, I have had the privilege of handling both international and local clients or accounts, most memorable of which in art and culture are the art exhibits that I had brought to New York, and likewise the exhibit featuring the works of John Lennon from New York, which I also produced here in Manila. And then there's also Miss Saigon, that very popular musical which starred La Salonga when it ran for a number of years on Broadway and in West End. A Manila production was produced here in 2000, and I handled that for Saigon Company. Today, I am very much involved in theater. I handle a lot of projects in theater. Companies like Repertory Philippines. This year, we handled their plays next fall, Leading Ladies, the children's production, The Wizard of Oz, and forthcoming next month would be Camp Rock, the musical. I also help out other theater companies from Ateneo, Blue Ref, and then there's Dulaang Kalay from Kalayaan College. And then I also help out other companies as well, like Nine Works Theatrical, which produced Rent, The Wedding Singer, and also once in a while I would also handle other clients outside of theater. Other memorable accounts, well, if you're talking of international accounts, when Benetton, that fashion label, was launched here in the 80s, I also handled the launch here for their PR campaign, just like this luxury brand Louis Vuitton. For food and restaurants, I handled Ilustrado Restaurant, that famous restaurant at the walled city of Intramuros. There's so much to say as far as what my body of work is all these years, but in total, my name is very synonymous to lifestyle PR accounts. If you're also wondering how do you differentiate what is the meaning of handling a local international campaign, differentiated in those two terminologies, when you handle a campaign for a local brand, it is geared towards the local market. But you just don't say it is the total market per se. First, you must be able to know what is the project or what is the brand that you're talking of. Because each brand or each project would address their own target market, right? So if you're talking of theater, the people that you have to talk to when you write your PR campaign materials will have to be people who love theater. If you handle a food in a restaurant account, when you send a press release, with a photo of a specific food, you will have to address people who like to eat out. Now, if you want to address a clothes brand, like probably Folded and Hung or Bench, you have to talk language that's pertinent to people who love fashion, or what you call fashionistas. Now, how do you transpose that into an international PR campaign? What usually makes it international is if the brand or if the project gets simultaneously launched all together, coming from the Philippines as the kick-off point, and then you launch a regional campaign, like probably in Southeast Asia for Hong Kong, and then you go to Singapore, and then probably go to Korea, and then wind up probably in Malaysia or in Indonesia. Now, if you want it much more, in a manner of speaking, global, then you can also bring it to New York or even to London. But if the concept is basically or inherently Filipino in nature, and you go overseas, that's how it now becomes a global PR campaign. If I will have to use a specific example, not necessarily my own account, but it's the account of the government, which we now have liked and loved personally amongst each other, is the Department of Tourism's campaign, It's More Fun in the Philippines. Here, locally, we are all encouraged to do our own bits of contribution to tourism. You post your own little story in their Facebook account. You say a little something. Why is it more fun in the Philippines? They even have a contest here. Now, this is for the regional, this is for here, no? Meaning for Filipinos. But what the Department of Tourism did was to even launch them globally, so that all the Filipinos abroad would also relish all their experiences about why is it really more fun in the Philippines. That's why even if you go via social network, that's what you call the Facebook, the Twitter and all, you would usually post a photo, like you go to a fiesta and then you post there, and then it's really more fun in the Philippines, diba? So, if you bring the campaign outside, then you also address the Filipinos and also the potential tourists to come here. So it's an international PR campaign. About the PR tools that we usually apply for local campaigns, again, as I had mentioned earlier, it will always have to depend on the subject or the product. But what are usually basic is, for one, you must be able to prepare a very efficient press kit, because the press kit is the one that contains all the pertinent materials or information about the specific project. That press kit is usually distributed to all the members of the media when you send them to their offices, or when you invite them to come to your press launch. Usually, launches are held over lunch, because that's usually the best time for the press to come to your event. It's very rare that press launches are done at 6 o'clock. But as I had mentioned earlier, it will again depend on the nature of the project, because 6 o'clock is usually the time when they are in their offices closing their pages. Sir Toots, is there a lunch of a product over breakfast? Again, it will also depend on the project that you are launching. But if the project or the product is breakfast oriented, then you will have to take the press for breakfast. But of course, it should follow that the press should wake up early also to attend your breakfast launch. Some launches are also not done in the usual manner of speaking, like in a hotel or in a restaurant. Sometimes it's also done in a spa because the project has something to do with products that are pertinent to the spa. Or if you were to launch, like say, a watch, like before when I used to handle the Omega watches, we launched it over golf when we involved quite a number of celebrities who play golf. And then it's a friendship game, and whoever gets to win gets to own the watch. I have never handled a motoring account like for a car launch, but for a launch like for a car, it has to be done in an area that's befitting of a car to be appreciated. So there is interaction. So there's what you call a test drive, so that the motoring editors or the motoring writers will be able to write the best perceptions on how that car is. Some projects or some brands that are launched locally would also need to be launched internationally. Now, in the international perspective, these basic principles of the tools that I had made mention earlier would also apply. Because, like for example, if I was a PR consultant in Hong Kong and I would be launching a new dish in the hotel property that I work for, of course I would still call on the local Hong Kong press, and I would also call the international press who are also based in Hong Kong to launch that specific dish in the hotel. There will also be customary press launches over lunch. It's the same. What makes an international PR campaign so much more different than a local campaign is actually dependent on the subject or on the product. But in terms of the tools, they are primarily the same. Some differences or nuances can only happen based on the dictates of that specific product. For example, if you were to launch, like say, Miss Saigon, or let's say Les Miserables, internationally, if it starts from London, they would present the cast, they will present some snippets of the show, there will be interviews, there will be photos taken. It's the same. So if that Les Miserables project was launched in London and it goes to New York, that same formula would still apply. And if it lands in Manila and they get Toots Tolentino as the PR, it will still apply. So there is no such a thing as a differentiation. It's just some marked nuances inherent to the project or to the brand. That's why I always go back to the project or the brand. There is no hard and fast rules that it has to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You cannot go beyond number 10. You have to work within the confines of 1 to 10. No, it isn't so. It will always have to depend on the project or the brand. Being able also to understand who your target market is, what their language is, what are their lifestyles, what are their habits, what is their socio-economic profile, that's also very important to be able to evolve a very efficient PR campaign. So if it's for a beauty product, you must be able to understand what your market likes and dislike, pertinent to their requirements for their vanity. Um, when there is an international campaign, it usually starts from the mother country. For example, there's going to be a launch of a brand from France or from Paris. It's a luxury brand called Louis Vuitton. They're going to launch their latest bag. You're familiar with the logos LV? That's Louis Vuitton, no? Because I handled that when it was launched here many years ago. If in Paris there's going to be a launch and there's going to be a special event inviting all the beautiful people in the fashion industry in Paris, meaning models, artists, designers, people that matter in the French community, they would usually have a launch in their store on Champs-Élysées or in any of their stores around France. They usually do other launches or to complete the scenario, and from Paris they usually bring that launch in New York, and then in Asia they would usually launch it also in Tokyo or in Hong Kong. And since Louis Vuitton is also now being carried here as one of the luxury brands available in Greenbelt 5, they would also launch it in Manila. And usually the event covers almost the same nature. It's just that the people are the only ones that change, because the Manila fashion circle is also different from the New York fashion circle, the French fashion circle, and the British fashion circle. Now, are there any problems or are there any other weaknesses that usually occur when you launch international brands? Actually, if you are a very efficient PR agency handling an international launch, during the pre-production or the pre-launch stage, that is the most critical, because you should be able to address all the details when you put up that campaign in the area that you're responsible for. Logistics is very important. Of course, budget is very important. There is no such a thing as a hit and miss or I forgot it. If you are handling an international launch, your passion for details has to really be tested to the max. Because usually when budgets are approved by the head office in Paris, it would usually take much longer time for you to request for an additional budget for other expenses that you anticipated that had